If you don't make it a 5-day weekend with triple pay, we're quitting right now. 6 employees, who all joined the company through board connections, slammed resignation letters on my desk. They're saying they want to quit because of me. If that happens, the company could hold me responsible. They involved the executives to impose a harsher punishment on me than necessary, allowing the nepotism hires to feel satisfied with the decision and withdraw their resignations, staying with the company. This is the true aim of these nepotism hires. It seems they've really taken a dislike to me. They must be looking forward to seeing me panic after getting 6 resignation letters all at once. But I don't flinch at stuff like this. Alright, then. I'll hold on to these. I'll double check with our president, Mr. Morris, but I doubt he'll go for such outrageous demands. So it looks like you'll all be leaving. What? You think you can just let us quit? Is there a problem with that? This is ridiculous. I'm going straight to Mr. Morris about this. Seeing I didn't react as they'd expected, the nepotism hires start to get frustrated. But even if they take this to Mr. Morris, the answer will be the same. Right in front of them, I call Mr. Morris. Understood, I'll accept all of them. With Mr. Morris's response, the nepotism hires are visibly shaken. It's only natural, they have no idea why Mr. Morris and I are on the same page. My name is Steve. I'm 50 years old and work at an IT company. I'm the head of the sales department. Sometimes people wonder, sales at an IT company, but every company needs salespeople to pitch their products and services. Our company's main focus is digital marketing. Using AI and big data, we analyze results to create systems to sell our clients' products and services and provide strategies for implementation. So even in sales, you need IT knowledge to explain what our company can do. I didn't know much about IT originally, but I focused on learning over the past 5 years. Now, I could probably handle the basics of a junior programmer's work. Starting something new in my mid-40s was a bit daunting, but with some determination, it's manageable. The reason I suddenly needed IT knowledge was because I changed jobs. The reason for that change? The usual office politics. To be specific, I got caught up in a power struggle at my previous company. With President Sanders about to retire, his son, Vice President Kyle, and another executive, Travis, were at each other's throats. I wasn't on either side, but my boss, sales manager Mark, was on Team Travis. Travis lost to Kyle, who then became the president. With Kyle in charge, Mark was removed as sales manager, replaced by someone in Kyle's camp. Normally, that kind of move would be a serious problem. But the Kyle faction seemed skilled at navigating gray areas, so while some raised concerns, none of them got anywhere. The world behind the scenes of adulthood is a scary place. Unjust actions like these were happening across various departments, creating an undercurrent of trouble even though things seemed quiet on the surface. I could feel the backlash creeping toward me as well, just because I had worked under Mark, who was on Travis' side. I had no interest in office factions and wanted nothing to do with the drama. Watching colleagues undermine each other over something as petty as who do you like better, Kyle or Travis, only strengthened my decision to leave. I need to find a new job soon. Changing jobs at 45 was daunting, to say the least. I didn't regret my decision, but I was feeling the weight of it as I scrolled through job listings. Then, one posting caught my eye. A sales position at an IT company, let's see. It looks like it's a newly established company, and they're looking to strengthen their sales team. I've got plenty of sales experience, and they need someone urgently. This might be my chance. I applied right away. So, everyone, Steve will be joining us from today. My name is Steve. I worked in sales at my previous company, though I'm new to the IT field. I'll do my best, and I appreciate your patience. That's how I came to my current company. When I introduced myself, Mr. Morris welcomed me to the team, and everyone applauded. At the time, the company was still very young, having been established just 3 years prior. We're a full subsidiary of a larger company. Originally, our line of business was part of the parent company's operations. They spun it off into a subsidiary. It's called a carve-out. When our company was formed, many employees from the parent company's digital marketing division came over, but most were tech specialists, leaving us with few people skilled in sales. That's why they posted a sales job opening, and that's how I ended up here. Diving into an unfamiliar industry at 45 was nerve-wracking, but everyone kindly taught me about digital marketing, including data collection, analysis, and tools and software usage. The energy typical of a young company was contagious, and I felt my own motivation rising as I absorbed the atmosphere. I was so eager to learn that my colleagues seemed to think I was worth teaching. They even showed me programming basics and some hardware knowledge, things not strictly necessary for sales. Of course, I couldn't just focus on gaining knowledge. I also handled my sales tasks thoroughly. Apparently, the company had struggled seriously with a lack of sales strength and had trouble securing work. I thought, this is my chance to repay the favor, and eagerly shared my sales expertise with the sales team. As a result, the sales department grew rapidly. Recognizing this success, I was promoted from assistant manager to department head within just 5 years. That's how desperate the company was for sales expertise. Over the past 5 years, I'd been able to work without the bizarre human drama that had plagued me at my previous job. Everything had been smooth sailing. But as it turns out, strange relationships seem to pop up out of nowhere. Since our auditor Mike recently retired, we'll have someone new from the parent company joining us as auditor. It shouldn't affect most of you, but keep it in mind. In the past year, 2 board members retired, with one more this year. It seems that the people who become board members in our company are often high-ranking or high-achieving employees from the parent company who join us after their retirement. A sort of corporate version of senior placement. While this practice can be criticized, the retired board members genuinely worked for the company's benefit. So I didn't see it as senior placement. But that sentiment only applied to those retired board members. The 3 new arrivals who joined since last year were different. They're not picking up the phone again. Sorry, could you check if this part of the document is correct? It's urgent. They were here around 11, so, at this hour, they're probably. I'll bet they're all over there. I often get asked by Mr. Morris to do work that technically isn't mine. Mainly, it's tracking down the board members. I've pretty much figured out their routines by now. Ah, there you are. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm here at Mr. Morris's request. Oh, it's you again. We're in an important meeting here, don't you have any sense? Well, that may be, but I'm here on direct orders from Mr. Morris. It'd be easier if he'd stop going through us and just do it himself. That Mr. Morris, no sense of what's appropriate, huh? Apparently, the 3 board members were holding a very important meeting. The venue? A private room in a fancy Japanese restaurant. The table was laden with beautifully plated seasonal dishes, and 5 empty beer bottles lined one side. It certainly looked like a high-stakes meeting. Suppressing a sigh, I handed one of the board members the documents Mr. Morris had asked me to deliver. The document wasn't particularly thick, but it was packed with detailed numbers that would take time to review carefully. But the board member merely skimmed through it for 5 seconds before handing it back. It's fine. Just go ahead and send it to the tax office. Understood. I'll let Mr. Morris know. Now that you're done, get out of here. You're interrupting our meeting. Of course. Sorry to intrude. I bowed to the board members and left the private room. I didn't leave right away, though, standing quietly just outside the sliding door. From inside, I occasionally overhear conversations about work, like I just closed a huge deal, but more often it's things like, I recently lost money in stocks, or I spent $30,000 on a family vacation, which, to me, only sound like smug, boastful tales, accompanied by laughter. I wasn't in a position to criticize the board members, and even if I did, it wouldn't change anything. Eventually, I quietly stepped away from the room. The new board members have been doing whatever they want since they arrived. For starters, they rarely come to the office, since they're on a delegation contract, not as employees. They aren't obligated to keep regular hours like the rest of us. So, simply not coming to the office isn't an issue in itself. The previous board members would also come and go, but they were diligent about their work. These new board members, however, are different. When they're not around, they're reportedly golfing, traveling, or spending entire days drinking at home. When they occasionally come to the office, it's usually just before noon, and soon after, the three executives head out together. Their destination is often an upscale restaurant, where they enjoy food and drinks under the guise of a meeting. For these board members, the office is just a convenient meeting point. If they at least handled their work properly, I'd have no complaints, but as expected, their work is sloppy. Most of their responsibilities are just dumped on Mr. Morris. Their job seems to be pretending to work. Because of their slipshod approach, all the extra work ends up falling on Mr. Morris. So, why doesn't Mr. Morris say anything to them? It's yet another adult issue, like factional rivalries. I appreciate you always handling the board members for me. I'm just swamped, and if I didn't send someone with a bit of authority, they'd likely get offended. That's fine, but is everything really okay? Yes, it's fine. Not like I could say anything even if I wanted to. One of the downsides of being a hired president. Mr. Morris smiled, taking the documents from me. He's a hired president. While he's responsible for managing the company, he doesn't wield the authority you'd typically associate with the title. In some ways, his position isn't much different from a regular employee. The executives working under Mr. Morris held high positions at the parent company. As a result, within the company, the group of executives from the parent company has more influence than Mr. Morris himself. Unable to assert his opinions or rein in their reckless behavior, Mr. Morris must be feeling quite frustrated. Up to now, the main issue had been between the board members and Mr. Morris, but their unchecked behavior is starting to affect us as well. I'm new to both sales and IT, but I'll do my best. This year, 6 months after a new board member joined, a new mid-career hire joined the team. His name was Spencer. He was hired to fill the position left by the previous assistant manager in the sales department, who had recently left. It was good to have additional personnel, but the selection and hiring process were riddled with issues. Well then, let's start by familiarizing you with the company, I said, leading Spencer around the various departments, explaining things as we went. But he seemed to have no interest in work-related topics and kept derailing the conversation. Hey, Steve, know any good spots around here with a nice vibe where you can quietly grab a drink? I want to scout out a place I could use for a date after work. I'm in the middle of explaining the development department right now. Who cares about that? You're not one of those uptight types, are you, Steve? If you're too serious, you'll end up overworked and exhausted. Take it easy. I'm the department head, showing around the assistant manager. Yet here Spencer was, laughing and giving me a hearty pat on the shoulder. It was clear he didn't take me seriously at all. I guess it's true what they say, like father, like son. Yes, this new assistant manager was the son of one of the board members. And, according to Mr. Morris, Spencer was hired under pressure from his father, the board member. Apparently, he was ushered in as a prestigious university graduate with a wealth of job experience. Nepotism isn't illegal, after all. And it's true Spencer graduated from a top university and has indeed held various jobs. Just hearing this, one might think Spencer is an elite. On paper, he's a highly qualified addition. But there was one critical piece of information the board member neglected to mention. Hey, are your hands even moving? You don't seem to be getting anything done. What? My hands are moving, aren't they? I see you just scrolling on your phone. When I say moving your hands, I mean working, not just tapping your screen. Just taking a break here. There's a festival event in my mobile game right now. I'll get back to work as soon as I pull the character I'm after. The character? Look, I need you to actually learn the job here. If you're going to hand me such boring tasks, it's only natural I'd lack motivation, right? Don't worry, I'll finish by the end of the day. That's a 30-minute task, by the way. Oh, come on, Steve, you're ruining my luck here. I haven't even hit a single featured pull. If you keep bugging me, I'll tell my dad you're distracting me while I'm trying to focus. I was at a loss for words, finding it exhausting even to respond. To help Spencer get accustomed to his job, I gave him something simple, the kind of task even new hires could handle. Yet he dismissed it as boring work. Apparently, a wealth of job experience meant that he'd simply drifted from one job to the next. The reason he'd bounced around jobs was obvious. With a father in a high-ranking position at a company and a degree from a prestigious university, Spencer developed a rather prideful personality. He likely displays the same attitude wherever he works, repeatedly quitting with claims like, "They're not making the most of my talents." He seemed to view himself as an elite, but his lack of tenure in any job meant he probably hadn't developed any real skills or experience. Was someone like that really suited to be in a management role? I finally consulted with Mr. Morris. I'm on the same page as you, but, well, because of his father, right? Exactly. The assistant manager position is open, so let's put my son in it. That's how he ended up hired at that level. If we were to remove him from the role now, well, you can imagine. That would be a nightmare. Mr. Morris and I had no choice but to put up with it for now. I could still correct Spencer's behavior here and there, but making a big deal out of it was best avoided. The less I intervened, the more Spencer seemed to take after the board members. Good morning. Sorry, I got carried away last night with some friends. Spencer strolled in at 11:30 a.m. And, despite it not yet being lunchtime, he immediately started eating. Hey. What? Are you going to tell me to get to work? If I start now, I'll just be interrupted by the lunch break, and that's not efficient. It's better to skip the morning and concentrate in the afternoon, don't you think? In the end, Spencer devoted his afternoon to playing mobile games on his phone. Spencer's behavior was clearly bringing down morale around the office. The impact on me, as someone who had to interact with him directly, was especially harsh. I could feel the mental exhaustion creeping in. As if Spencer alone wasn't enough, others just like him began to spring up. I'll be joining the system support department. I'm excited to finally try a job I've been interested in. A few months after Spencer joined, a new mid-career hire was brought in. The system support department hadn't actually needed more people. Yet, they hired someone with no experience in IT and minimal knowledge of the field. This was another board member's connection. Apparently, one board member thought, if that person's son could be brought in, then so can mine, and pushed to get their own child in the door. While this new hire wasn't given a management position, I knew the struggles that came with managing nepotism hires. Of course, the third board member wasn't about to stay quiet. Thus, a third connection hire joined the company. I figured this had to be the limit, but it seemed the board members and connection hires' mindset was well beyond anything I could have imagined. Meet my girlfriend. She said she was bored with her last job, so I told her, why not join us here? Spencer had his girlfriend brought in through his father's influence, as casually as if he were inviting her to his own home. At this point, anything went. The nepotism hire in the system support department then brought in a friend. This friend, apparently the son of a CEO from another company, was hired under the pretext that it would establish a business connection. And the final straw. I'll be joining the General Affairs Department. This is my first time in an office job, so I don't know much. But I look forward to learning. A young woman in her early 20s, not a relative of any board member, was brought in. According to Mr. Morris, she was a regular at one of the board members' favorite places. In this case, I couldn't see any logic or adult considerations behind the hire. Allegedly, she'd once mentioned, working at an IT company sounds cool. I'd love to be able to say that. So, the board member had said, "Then join us. I have no prejudice against people who work in the nightlife industry." However, it was obvious this young woman was here purely on a whim. My condolences to the General Affairs Department. Within mere months of Spencer's arrival, the number of nepotism hires had grown to 6. Not a single one of them took their work seriously, every one of them was a Spencer type. And since they were all the same type, with the shared trait of having joined through connections, they quickly bonded into a single group. The kind of people who, once grouped, become emboldened. The nepotism hires' behavior only became worse. "All right, good work, everyone." One day, just past closing time, I heard loud voices coming from a meeting room that wasn't supposed to be in use. I had a pretty good idea of what was going on, but I had to check to be sure. With a heavy feeling in my chest, I stood up from my chair and headed toward the meeting room. "Oh, Steve. Great to see you. What are you guys doing?" "Just having a little party." Everyone wanted different things to eat, so we all picked up what we wanted and decided to have some drinks here. The large table in the meeting room was covered with pizza, fried chicken, something that looked like Korean food, all giving off a delicious aroma. They also had a wide variety of alcoholic drinks. It was quite the party. The only issue was that it was taking place in a company meeting room. "Hey, Steve, want to join us for a bit?" "No, thanks. I still have work to do." "Ah, you're as serious as ever. There are still people working around here. Try to keep it down." Yeah, we got it." Already drained from dealing with these nepotism hires, I left the meeting room in a sort of mental autopilot. For now, I figured that was all I could do. In the end, the boisterous laughter of the nepotism hires repeatedly echoed through the walls of the meeting room. And things on the worksite continued to go downhill. "Spencer, do you have the materials I asked for?" Not yet. Don't say that like it's no big deal. I told you before, this kind of simple work just doesn't motivate me. I mean, I'm an assistant manager. When am I going to get a real task?" I thought I was assigning Spencer work that matched his actual abilities rather than his title, but he clearly didn't appreciate it. Knowing he likely wouldn't get the work done, I'd quietly assign the same task to another team member as backup. As things stood, Spencer was contributing nothing. But as a manager, part of my job is to utilize our team effectively. So, I decided to give Spencer a slightly more challenging task, just to see how he'd handle it. "Fine. We have a major negotiation coming up soon. How about you prepare the sales materials for it? We've already assigned the lead. So you won't be involved in the actual negotiations, but if your materials are good, we'll use them. It's an important presentation for a major deal." "That's more like it. I've been waiting for something like this." "Alright then, here's the client's information, this is research on the industry, and here are the compiled client requests. You don't have to explain everything in such detail." "Okay, if you're sure. You've got 5 days, so take your time and do it thoroughly." Spencer seemed genuinely excited to dive into the task, like a kid with a new toy. As for the sales materials, I'd already completed them myself. If Spencer managed to make something better, I'd genuinely use his version, but given his history of job hopping, I doubted it. Still, he did graduate from a prestigious university. So he might surprise me and create at least a part that's better than mine. If that happened, I'd simply incorporate that section. Having his work used for a major negotiation could boost his confidence and maybe even lead him to take his work more seriously. And if he couldn't complete it, he might at least realize his own limitations and reflect. Whatever the outcome, it should benefit Spencer in some way. At least, that's what I'd hoped. But I'd underestimated Spencer's unique way of thinking. What does this term even mean? Wait, does this mean that messes up this entire section? Oh, come on. At first, Spencer had eagerly started working on the project, but by the next day, he was muttering complaints, scratching his head in frustration. His skill level was barely above that of a fresh graduate. It looked like this task would indeed lead him to reflect on his capabilities. Hey, are you doing all right? I'm fine. No need to rush me. I tried to offer some help, but Spencer seemed trapped by his own bravado, unable to admit he might need assistance. Even if he couldn't finish, I'd already done the work myself, so there was no real risk. I decided to just let things play out. 4 days after assigning Spencer the task, I noticed he wasn't at his desk right after closing time. Where could he have gone? Just then, I heard loud voices coming from the meeting room. It seemed the nepotism hires were holding yet another drinking party. Did Spencer really have time for this? It was time to step in. I stood up and made my way to the meeting room. As I reached for the door handle, I heard Spencer's voice through the door, making me pause. When I asked for a real task, he handed me one with the difficulty cranked to max. No way that's a 5-day task. And he has the nerve to ask me if I'm alright, trying to provoke me. Can't he assign work at a more reasonable level? With a more realistic schedule? When you push people too hard, they just end up making mistakes. This is definitely some kind of harassment. Guess it's the tall poppy thing, right? Spencer, you're an elite, after all, graduating from a top university. Is harassment still a thing these days? That guy's so narrow-minded, probably has the emotional depth of a bottle cap. Exactly. People like that need to face consequences. Are you going to ask your dad to deal with him? I'd love to, but my dad's hardly ever here, right? I've been waiting the past 4 days, but he hasn't shown up. So I haven't been able to bring it up. Can't you call him? He's not picking up. Probably off on another overseas trip with mom or something. Looks like Steve's punishment will have to wait, then. Well, I've been thinking. Hearing Spencer's scheme, I felt a fresh wave of exhaustion wash over me. I had endured his self-indulgent behavior, even tried my best to get him to take his work seriously. But now, he'd interpreted every simple task I assigned and every slightly challenging project as deliberate harassment. I was left with a strange mix of disappointment and anger. And on top of that, he was planning to go through the board to try and punish me for imagined slights. The other nepotism hires seemed to be on the same page as him. Their mindset wasn't just out of left field, it was practically orbiting the moon. With the backing of the board, these hires treated the company like their personal playground, stirring up chaos. I'd hoped there was still a path forward for them, but it was clear now that no such path was needed. Soon enough, their backing would be removed, and they'd get a taste of the real world. Back at my desk, I picked up the phone. The next day, while I was working, the 6 nepotism hires lined up in front of my desk. They all have smirks on their faces, each holding a resignation letter in their hand. I already knew what they were going to say, having overheard their plans in the meeting room yesterday. If you don't make it a 5-day weekend with triple pay, we're quitting right now. At Spencer's cue, they slammed their resignation letters onto my desk. The nepotism hires from other departments were here too, likely to create the appearance that 6 employees want to quit because of me. If they could pull that off, I'd be held responsible. Then, with the board's intervention, they'd impose a harsher punishment on me, which would allow the nepotism hires to graciously withdraw their resignations and stay. As long as they submitted the letters, the board would handle the rest, so the reason didn't matter. They'd chosen an absurd demand like 5-day weekends with triple pay, knowing it would never be granted. Just as they'd planned yesterday. I'm sure they were waiting for me to panic, faced with 6 resignation letters all at once. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Understood. I'll hold on to these for now. I'll check with Mr. Morris, but I don't think this demand will be approved. So you'll all likely end up resigning. What? Do you understand what these resignations mean? All of us will be gone. If the demands aren't met, you're resigning, right? Isn't that what you wanted? Is there a problem? No, I mean, are you okay with us leaving? I'm a board member's son, and everyone here has their own board member looking out for them. If you let us quit, I'll have my dad revoke our resignations and make sure you're fired instead. Feel free to do so, if you can. You really don't get it, do you? This is pointless. I'll just go straight to Mr. Morris. He's my dad's puppet anyway, so he'll listen to me. No need to make a fuss. Mr. Morris has been swamped, so let me just give him a call for you. I picked up my desk phone and dialed with the speaker on so the nepotism hires could hear. Hello, Mr. Morris, sorry to bother you when you're so busy. This is about what we discussed over the phone yesterday evening. Oh, you mean Spencer and the others' resignations? What? They submitted resignations, saying they want 5-day weekends and triple pay, and I'm holding on to them now. What would you like me to do? Got it, let's accept them all. Hand the resignation letters to HR. Understood. How's everything on your end? Busy with all the follow-up, but nothing unmanageable. All right then. I'll proceed as we discussed. Yep, I'll leave it in your hands. Ending the call, I gently placed the receiver down. And I looked up at the nepotism hires. They couldn't hide their shock. I could tell they had a lot of questions for me. As their manager, I thought I'd answer them thoroughly. How did he know about our plan yesterday? I heard your little scheme outside the meeting room. You were talking so loud it was impossible not to overhear. I figured since you're planning to have your fathers back you up, you didn't care who overheard. So that's why you called Mr. Morris yesterday. But why would he accept our resignations so easily? He's supposed to be our dad's puppet. There's no way he'd actually let us quit. What if your dads were no longer around? What? My dad, gone? The official announcement is still coming, but yeah, all your fathers have been dismissed from the board. What? My dad. I don't have all the details yet, but one of them landed a big contract for the company without consulting the board and accepted it unilaterally. He reportedly said, "It's a big deal, what's the problem?" But it turns out he was secretly taking kickbacks from that company. A kickback. Another one lost a huge amount in personal stock trading and used the company savings account as collateral to cover his debts. That's reckless. He could have put the whole company at risk. And the third one? He was simply embezzling funds. He tried to cover it up with fake tax records, but the tax authorities caught on. The company now faces penalties, late fees, and additional taxes. The three of them even coordinated to falsify financial reports to the parent company. That's why they were dismissed. Oh, and the one who stole funds? He's been arrested for embezzlement. So, the tax guy, that's my dad. No wonder I couldn't reach him. And I guess that's why the others haven't been around either. Mr. Morris is running around trying to handle all of this right now. How did it all go wrong so quickly? It wasn't quick. Mr. Morris started suspecting your fathers the moment they began acting out. But as a hired president, if he'd acted openly, they could have found a reason to fire him. So he quietly started gathering information that could lead to their dismissal. That's also why he didn't discipline you all too harshly to avoid making waves with the board members. It took a lot of steady effort. He couldn't act openly, so he pulled together a few trusted people. I was one of them. I'd observe your father's lunch meetings, golfing trips, and so on, and I picked up on things like the big contracts, stock losses, and shady tax adjustments. But Mr. Morris couldn't have investigated everything on his own. Wouldn't he have needed a lawyer or private investigator? Surely. Our dads would have noticed that. True. Hiring an investigator would have raised suspicion. Mr. Morris could have discreetly consulted our legal advisor, Henry. But knowing the board members were doing shady things, they'd have been watching Henry. So he didn't go that route. Then who dug up the dirt? You don't get someone dismissed from the board without solid evidence. Surely Mr. Morris hired a pro? He turned to our external management advisor, Harry. Management advisors are often experienced former executives who know how to handle corporate crises. Your dads were too focused on Henry to notice Mr. Morris consulting with Harry, who quietly gathered evidence and handled things behind the scenes. By the time your fathers realized what was happening, it was already over. No way. The nepotism hires listened, slowly realizing that their powerful shield had been dismantled. All 6 of them stood there, looking pale and shaken. About those resignation letters. Could we take them back? If we hand these in, and the board members are gone, that means we'll actually be resigning, right? We will, work hard, we promise. Oh, no need to push yourselves. Weren't you asking for 5-day weekends and triple pay? We can't meet those conditions here. So I suggest you find a company that can. I'm really sorry we couldn't make your dreams come true. What? You're not giving the resignation letters back? Isn't that illegal, forcing us to resign when we don't actually want to? Spencer has drifted from one job to another up to now. The more times he switches jobs, the worse the impression he leaves during job searches. If each stint is short, that impression only gets worse. With his father arrested and no one left to rely on, perhaps he realized he couldn't afford another hit to his job record, so he clung to me. But shaking him off was easy. Oh, so you're not resigning voluntarily? Then perhaps termination would be better? What? Termination? On what grounds? Poor work performance. You can't just fire me for that. That's wrongful termination. If you do this, I'll sue the company. Actually, it's not. Our company policies clearly cover work performance. Usually, poor attitude alone isn't enough for termination. But you came in late, didn't complete tasks, and threw parties in the meeting room. I think the evidence speaks for itself. Any claim of wrongful termination wouldn't stand up. You've got to be kidding. No, I'm quite serious. Leaving voluntarily will look better on your record, wouldn't it? I'll take these resignation letters to HR. None of you have any work to hand over, so don't worry about coming in tomorrow. I stood up and made my way to HR. Behind me, the nepotism hires slumped in defeat, some staring at the ceiling, others looking down. The next day, I arrived at work to find parts of the office trashed. Apparently, Spencer had vandalized it out of spite. The security cameras had captured everything. Of course, Spencer was arrested. He even looked at the cameras a few times, so he clearly intended to get caught. Having lost his father's support and been forced out of the company, he'd hit rock bottom. In light of the board members' misconduct, the parent company decided to respect our company's independence fully, ensuring that no board members would be assigned to us from now on. After getting tangled in office politics at my last company and dealing with this corporate nepotism here, things had finally stabilized. Thanks to the parent company's strong response, the atmosphere returned to the positive vibe we had before the rogue board members arrived. It seems there won't be any more strange troubles to get caught up in. At last, I'd found an environment where I could focus on my work without unnecessary distractions. From now on, I'm determined to work hard alongside everyone in the company. My name is Kevin. I'm not sure where to begin, but I thought I'd start by sharing a bit about my past. I grew up without a father. Since I only knew a household without a father figure, it didn't feel strange to me. But around elementary school, I started to realize it wasn't exactly normal. I began to wonder, why didn't we have a father in our home? Some friends, without much thought, would sometimes bring it up. Hey, Kevin, why don't you have a dad at home? I couldn't answer that. After hearing it a few times, I couldn't help myself. I decided to ask my mom. Hey, Mom, why don't we have a dad at home? Right after I asked, I regretted it. She looked troubled, a bit lost. Kevin, But that's all she said, and then she went quiet. Seeing her like that, I understood. This was something I shouldn't have asked. I quickly put on a smile. Well, it's fine. You're twice as kind to me as any dad would be, so that's enough for me. And with that, I didn't wait for her to respond. I just ran outside to play. Living with just my mom didn't feel lonely. She worked late every night, on weekdays and weekends alike, so I did feel a little sad during things like open house days or school events. But I knew she was working hard for me, so I never thought of complaining. Feeling lonely was out of the question. So, I held it in. For big events, like entrance and graduation ceremonies, my mom always made it there and even celebrated with me. She'd come home every night, and we'd sleep in the same room. Not because I was clinging to her or anything. We just didn't have enough space. Since Mom was working alone, we didn't have much money. So we lived in an old apartment with a tiny living room, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a single 6 tatami mat room. But I never thought to complain. It was just our life. I'd be alone in that little room, eating the food Mom prepared for me, taking a bath, setting out the futons, and waiting for her to come home. Mom and I slept in that 6 tatami room on 2 thin futons. Her back always looked so small. For some reason, though, I grew up tall, strong, and built. By the time I entered high school, I looked like a fully grown man. Because of that, I kept getting scouted for sports teams, but I figured I'd rather work a part-time job than join a club. One day, I brought a flyer to my mom. Mom, is it okay if I work here? The flyer was for a construction job. I'd seen it posted at a construction site I passed on my way to school, so I'd stopped by to ask about it. An older man who seemed to be in charge had given me this flyer. Mom took the paper, looked a bit surprised, and then started reading. After a few minutes, she looked up. But what about studying? High school only happens once. Why not enjoy it with a club or hanging out with friends? Well, honestly, I almost didn't go to high school. I wanted to start working and help out sooner. I smiled. Back when I was applying to high schools, I'd told her over and over. I wanted to start working as soon as I could to make things easier for her. But she'd always gently replied to me, Kevin, your teenage years only come once. Don't be afraid to make the most of them. You don't have to worry about money. Because my mom encouraged me like that, I decided to go to high school. Just having the opportunity to attend high school was a huge privilege for me. So I never even thought about wanting to hang out after school or join a club. No, I was planning on getting a job as soon as I turned 15. As long as you don't mind me working at this site, is it okay if I take the job? Thank you. Kevin, you're so thoughtful. And so, I began working at the construction site. There was a strong, handsome guy there. His name was Tom. He was friendly, easy to talk to, and genuinely kind. I quickly grew attached to him. Kevin, did you get something to eat? Yes. I ate 2 bowls. It's going to be hot again today. Make sure you stay hydrated. Yes. Thank you. Good. That's what I like to hear. Tom was 26. He was about 10 years older than me, but he had a youthful energy that made him feel like an older brother. Tom was also sort of my mentor, so he guided me with a mix of kindness and occasional strictness. He taught me more than just the job. He helped me prepare to step into the adult world and understand the kind of mindset I'd need. I really admired Tom. I wanted to grow up to be like him. The life lessons I learned from him went straight to my heart, much more naturally than the rules and regulations taught by teachers at school. In my mind, Tom became like the older brother I never had, or even the father I'd never known. With Tom and others at work supporting me, I worked hard. And most of my earnings went to support our household. Then, when I reached my senior year of high school, something happened. Kevin, have you thought about what you'll do after graduation? One day, Tom asked me. We're just a single-parent family, so I'm planning to start working right after high school. Is that so? Well, then, there's something I'd like to ask you. Tom hesitated for a moment, making me tilt my head in curiosity. Hey, Kevin. Would you be interested in working at this company with me? What? I was stunned. Work here? With Tom? I didn't hesitate. Are you serious? I'd love to work here. It was a no-brainer. Being able to work somewhere I felt motivated and enjoyed so much was all thanks to Tom. The idea of working alongside someone I admired felt like a dream. When he heard my response, Tom looked relieved. Great. I was a little worried you might say no. There's no way I'd say no. I replied with a big smile. It was a request from Tom, someone I admired deeply. Of course, I'd give him an enthusiastic yes. So, the three of us, my mom, Tom, and I, made plans to have a meal together to celebrate. My mom worked at a small diner. She reserved it just for us that evening, so Tom could enjoy her cooking. It was the day after my graduation. The three of us gathered at the small diner where my mom worked. It was a modest place, but it was clean and had a pleasant atmosphere. The table was filled with dishes my mom had prepared. Nice to meet you. Thank you for always looking out for Kevin. I'm his mother. No, it's me who should thank you. Kevin's been such a big help to us. My name is Tom. Both of them looked a bit nervous as they bowed to each other. I stood beside them, smiling. Kevin's truly a bright, hard-working young man. He's been such a joy to have on site. Oh, no. Kevin's told me so much about you, Tom. I'm grateful for everything you've done for him. They spent a while complimenting each other, talking about me and my part-time job. I felt a bit embarrassed to be praised like that in front of both of them. Once the mood had relaxed a bit, Tom brought up the main topic. I'd like to officially ask if Kevin could work with us at K Construction. K Construction was the company where I'd been working part-time. Yes, Kevin mentioned it. I'd be so grateful if he could continue working with you. I'm still fairly young myself, but I promise to take care of him and look out for him. From what I've heard, I have complete faith in you. Please take good care of him. And so, I became a full-time employee. Of course, I was already familiar with the worksite, so it didn't feel like a major change. The main difference was that my status shifted from part-timer to full-time employee, bringing new responsibilities. I also began working full days instead of just after school or on weekends. Still, it was a lively work environment, and most importantly, Tom was there, making it a place where I felt completely comfortable. I worked harder than ever. The tasks I was assigned became more challenging, and my responsibilities grew. I was even entrusted with training some of the part-time workers. But I didn't mind the physical labor at all and took my work seriously. My contributions to the household tripled. And my mom told me she could finally relax a bit. Best of all, she was able to come home by early evening instead of working late into the night, which was a huge relief to me. I'd always worried that, if things continued like that, she might eventually get sick. My mom was always sacrificing her own comfort and needs. So when the old apartment was set to be renovated, I took the chance to move us into a place with one extra room. The rent was a little higher, but by then, it wasn't right for an 18-year-old man to be sharing the same room with his mom. Kevin, I'm really sorry that you didn't have your own room until now. My mom bowed her head apologetically. But the truth was, if I didn't have a room, it meant she didn't either. It wasn't only me who'd had to adjust. When I explained it to her in a way that wouldn't make her feel bad, she looked a little relieved. Though our new place was slightly farther out. It had 2 4.5 tatami rooms, a living room, bathroom, and kitchen. The building was still old, with thin walls. But it was a step up for us. My mom had always been careful with spending, but I wanted her to eat better and have nicer clothes. When I told her that, she couldn't help but cry. Time went on, and I turned 26. Tom was 37. I'd known him for more than a decade. One day, he approached me with a serious look on his face. Kevin. Sensing something big, I prepared myself. I'll be transferred to the main office. What? When I saw Tom's serious expression, I thought something bad had happened, but this was actually great news. I broke into a smile. So, this is a promotion, right? Congratulations. You're moving to the main office? That's amazing. You're really going up in the world. I was genuinely happy, as if it were my own success. Of course, I'd miss working with Tom. But more than that, I was thrilled that his hard work was being recognized by the company. Tom had always been kind, not just to me, but to everyone he met. Just as I looked up to him, many of the younger workers also saw him as a role model. He was that kind of person, someone everyone admired. Because of his skill in mentoring others, he was promoted to the HR department. I was truly happy for him, and though he seemed a bit conflicted, he looked pleased too. I asked you to work with me here at K Construction and even promised your mom I'd look after you. I'm sorry, Kevin. That day, Tom treated me, and we went out for a drink together. Don't be. I'm going to keep giving it my best here, so don't worry. I'm only grateful that you've been looking out for me for over 10 years. Though I'd miss him, I resolved to do my best at the branch office. And with that, Tom moved to the main office. Since I mostly worked on site, I didn't have many chances to take calls, but whenever I got a call from HR, there were times I'd get to talk to Tom. I worked hard at K Construction without him. Then, a few months later, I received a transfer order. The call from HR was, in fact, from Tom himself. Kevin. You might have already seen the transfer notice, but you're being assigned to one of our affiliate companies. And so, I found myself at a new workplace, assigned to the affiliate company. I introduced myself as I entered the office. Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin, and I'll be working here starting today. I attempted to introduce myself. However, my greeting was abruptly cut off. Chris. Can't you do anything right? Sorry. In front of me, a man who looked to be in his early 30s was yelling at an employee. My introduction was cut off by his reprimanding voice. His name, I learned, was Jason. He was 30 years old. A college graduate who joined the company as an elite recruit and was now the department head. He would be my new supervisor. But it wasn't just that moment, he was always high-handed with everyone in the office. Chris. Another mistake? What's wrong with you? Maybe you should have someone check what's going on in that head of yours. Sorry, Jason. The one who gets scolded the most is a guy named Chris. Yes, he does make a lot of mistakes, which isn't great, but even so, the way he's reprimanded is just too harsh. It's been a few months since I was transferred here, and I've gotten a feel for the office dynamics. But the relationship between Jason and Chris remains the most shocking thing I've seen in my working life. I'd certainly encountered strict people before. On site, mistakes can lead to serious injuries. So, there were people who would deliver harsh reprimands for that reason. But I'd never seen anyone talk down to others in such a demeaning way. Chris. You messed up the numbers again. What's the deal? Are you trying to mess with me? No, not at all. I'm very sorry. Oh, So you just like to make me mad, don't you? Is that it? Is that why you keep making these stupid mistakes? I'll fix it right away. Fixing it doesn't make it okay, idiot. Are you messing with me? Ha! I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The next day, Jason's voice echoed through the office again. Chris, you got the numbers wrong here again. I had to apologize to the client because of you. Are you trying to get yourself fired? Which numbers, exactly? That day felt a bit different from usual. Why do I have to tell you twice? Listen the first time. The numbers here. The ones I read out don't match your sloppy report. But the numbers you read are the same ones I have here. What? Are you saying I'm the one who got it wrong? Listening to the exchange, I checked my own notes. Chris often made mistakes, but he was never the type to shift blame onto others. If anything, his tendency to apologize quickly was something I'd always respected about him. So this time, I wondered if maybe Chris was actually right. That thought crossed my mind. You must have made a mistake in your notes. You're always so slow and full of errors. Looking at my notes, I saw that the numbers I'd written down matched Chris's report. In other words, Jason had read out the wrong numbers himself. Chris wasn't at fault here. Chris, not only are you constantly making mistakes, but now you're blaming others? Do you want to be fired? I finally couldn't hold back anymore. Jason, excuse me. Here are my notes. I don't believe Chris made any mistakes in the numbers. The figures you read out. Before I could finish, Jason snatched the paper from my hand. After glancing over the numbers, he tore my notes into shreds. Oh, so you're challenging me now, are you? The room filled with tension. Jason was known for lashing out whenever things didn't go his way. And once he marked someone as an enemy, he would go after them relentlessly. Most people just tried to stay off his radar. But I just directly confronted him. Everyone around looked on with concern, wondering what would happen next. Kevin, who do you think you are? Your notes? You're the one who got it wrong, along with Chris. I spoke calmly. There was no point in escalating the situation. I sit right next to Chris and occasionally help him with his work. For that reason, I take notes on the numbers you read out, just in case. Oh, so you fed him the wrong numbers, didn't you? This time, I didn't communicate any numbers to Chris. It's highly unlikely that we both recorded the same incorrect numbers by coincidence. Oh, I see. You two are working together to set me up, aren't you? Is this fun for you? Suddenly, realizing he was losing ground, Jason tried to twist the situation. I stood firm and replied. In this case, Chris is not at fault. I can vouch for him. Hearing this, Jason's face turned bright red, and he stormed out of the room. Chris turned to me and murmured apologies. Kevin, I'm really sorry. You really saved me. He kept bowing to me over and over, clearly grateful. Chris made mistakes often, but he was a genuinely good person. I just didn't think you were at fault. I'm sorry if I overstepped. I did worry that my interference might only escalate Jason's harassment of Chris. But Chris continued to express his gratitude. Not at all. I can't thank you enough for standing up for me. A few hours later, I was called in by one of the executives. Kevin, I heard you went against Jason. Go apologize to him right now. Although the executive outranked Jason, his tone was unusually deferential. Puzzled, I replied. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Regardless, you spoke out of line, didn't you? You shouldn't be disrespectful to your superior. Disrespectful. I had only corrected him on a mistake he made. If that counted as disrespect, then what Jason was doing to Chris every day was downright humiliating. Anyway, just try to keep things calm, okay? With that, the executive patted my shoulder and left. Shortly after, Chris, who seemed to have overheard the conversation, called me over to the emergency stairwell. "What's going on?" I asked. "Kevin, actually. Jason is related to one of the senior board members." "Oh, is that so?" Suddenly, everything made sense. So that's it. The executives were tiptoeing around the board member, letting Jason do as he pleased to stay in his good graces. If you make him angry, your prospects could suffer. So, Kevin, maybe it's best to just go along with him, as strange as it sounds. I know you stood up for me, and I'm really grateful, but I worry this might cause problems for you down the line. Chris carefully chose his words, clearly concerned. I understood his worry. But what Jason had done that day had gone too far. I get it, Chris. But if you're constantly dealing with this kind of unreasonable treatment, isn't it taking a toll on you? It must make it hard to stay motivated. Every single day, Chris gets scolded relentlessly over minor mistakes. For example, if his process is slightly different from Jason's preferences. I think everyone should be allowed to have their own way of doing things, as long as the job gets done correctly. To me, as long as the final result was correct, the process should be left up to the individual. But Jason would constantly criticize him over details, saying things like, "Didn't I tell you to enter those numbers first?" Or, "Aren't you going to bring the printed documents?" It didn't matter if Chris collected one page at a time or waited to gather several, either way, the outcome was the same. And if Chris tried to explain, saying, "I was going to get both pages at once since I had two to print," Jason would yell, "What if your papers got mixed with someone else's?" And even say things like, "The printer isn't your personal property." Chris wasn't printing hundreds of pages or leaving things sitting there. If he was printing in large batches or leaving it for too long, sure, that would be a problem. But to be scolded over something as minor as 2 pages was beyond ridiculous. Watching Jason's relentless nitpicking day after day created a stifling, oppressive atmosphere for everyone around. Thank you, Kevin. Just having one person who supports me makes a huge difference. I'll manage somehow, I just have to endure it. Chris. Besides, my family is struggling financially. My mother passed away, and my father's health is poor. So I have to cover our living and medical expenses. Chris gave a weary smile. I understand. I grew up in a single-parent household too. This shared background brought us closer. And we began talking more, often catching up during lunch breaks. Then, just after the afternoon work began, Jason suddenly approached my desk. "Kevin, I have a job for you." With a loud thud, he dumped a huge stack of papers on my desk. "What's this?" I turned to see what he'd placed. A bundle of about 500 sheets. Then, he started stacking box after box of paperwork around my desk, filling the area with cardboard boxes. "Take all of this, remove every staple, and shred it." Got that? And make sure to remove every clip, too. Once you're done shredding, take the waste to the dumpster. This isn't part of my job, I said. Being suddenly handed a pile of menial tasks would interfere with my regular responsibilities. Jason, however, looked at me with a fierce, almost demonic expression. "Who do you think you're talking back to? If I say this is your job, then it's your job." Jason. "I can take care of this," Chris interjected. Chris had indeed been the one stuck with most of these tasks before. "Shut up, Chris. I'm in charge of assigning tasks. Keep your mouth shut." And so, from that day on, I became Jason's new target for harassment. Every day, he came up with increasingly petty ways to bother me. Not only that, but he started spreading negative rumors about me to clients, giving me false information during calls, and meddling with the tasks that were actually my responsibility. As this dragged on, the stress began to wear me down. One evening, I decided to stop by the diner where my mom worked. Going home to an empty, dark apartment feels lonely. It's hard to return to that kind of solitude. I just want to see my mom's face. When I arrived, I saw the closed sign on the front door. I knocked gently, hoping for a quick word before heading home, and stepped inside. Mom appeared from behind the counter. "Oh, Kevin. What brings you here?" "Oh, nothing." I couldn't bring myself to tell her that I'd come because of how rough things were at work, so I made up an excuse. I was nearby on business, so I thought I'd stop by on my way home. "I see," she replied. Just then, I noticed a figure moving at the far end of the counter. I hadn't realized there was someone else here. "Oh. I'm sorry." Without realizing it, I'd interrupted their conversation. The man smiled warmly and said, "No need to apologize." Since the closed sign was up, he probably wasn't a customer. I raised an eyebrow, curious. "Your son?" he asked. "Yes, I'm her son, Kevin." Not knowing who he was, I introduced myself politely. The man nodded, saying, "I see. I see," with a hint of emotion in his eyes. As I watched him, I began to get an inkling of what was going on. The man looked to be around my mother's age, and was dressed well, with an air of refinement. Maybe, just maybe, I suddenly felt uneasy. Sensing this, the man began to tell me everything. That night, I found myself unable to sleep. The next morning, I went to work as usual, and there was Jason, smirking at me. Then, he tossed a brochure at me. On the cover, it said Australia. "Can't you figure it out?" Jason sneered, noticing my puzzled expression. "It's the company trip. Go ahead and make the reservations." With that, he walked away. The trip was scheduled to take place in about 40 days. I hurried to make the reservation and finalize all the preparations. On the day of the company trip, I arrived at the airport. Even 5 minutes before the meeting time, no one else had shown up. 80 people were supposed to be on this trip. With so many people, it was definitely strange for no one to be there, so I decided to call Jason. "What's up?" Jason's voice sounded almost gleeful, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "It's the meeting time, and no one's here." I thought I'd call to check. I could hear bustling sounds in the background, so I asked, "Where are you right now?" "Right now?" "At a hot spring inn in Atomy." "Excuse me?" "It's the company trip." "The company trip?" What was he talking about? The plan was to go to Australia. Atomy, man, Atomy. Everyone's in Atomy. Oh, except Chris. I told him the destination changed to Tohoku and to meet us at the Shinkansen station. He's probably wandering around the station right about now, totally lost. I heard laughter from the employees around him. "Oh, and by the way, you'll be covering the cancellation fee." "Thanks a lot." This was beyond forgiveness. I spoke in a low voice. "Got it. You're all fired." "What?" "I'll go through HQ and make sure every last one of you gets terminated." My tone in the phrase "through HQ" must have shaken him because his tone suddenly changed. "Wait, what do you?" I hung up right there. Then, I noticed several missed calls from Chris. And I called him back. "Kevin. I just got a call from Jason saying the destination changed, but no one's here." I explained the situation to the bewildered Chris. He sounded angry too. Why would they pull something like this? They'll get what's coming to them. Just wait. I looked forward to the end of the 4-day trip they thought they were enjoying. When Monday came, Jason and the others returned from their Atomy getaway, grinning smugly and shooting glances at Chris and me. What was that again? Getting fired? Going through HQ? Can't wait to see how that pans out. Jason laughed. The surrounding employees chuckled, some even breaking out into loud laughter. "All right, you two lackeys, get on with the cleaning. Then start on the shredding." And if you're 5 minutes late, there's a penalty. Laughter filled the room. Just then, a low, commanding voice cut through the noise. I see, so this is the kind of environment you've created here. A deep male voice sounded, and everyone in the office turned toward the entrance. There stood Dad. Alongside the middle-aged man was Jason's father, Robert, who was the executive of our company, and next to him, Tom, who waved at me with a smile. Excuse me, but outsiders aren't allowed in here, Jason said to the older man and Tom. Immediately, Robert rebuked him. Don't be rude. This man is Mr. Anderson, the CEO of K Construction. Mr. Anderson? Jason looked absolutely stunned. Of course. Since we're just a subsidiary, it's understandable he'd never met the CEO of the main company before. But here he was, the CEO himself. The 5 of us, Mr. Anderson, Robert, Jason, Tom, and myself, were then gathered in the meeting room. I hear there's been a consistent pattern of harassment from you, Jason, the CEO said, looking directly at him. I briefly explained what had been happening. Jason quickly interrupted, desperate to defend himself. Mr. Anderson, this is all Kevin's fabrication. I have indeed provided guidance, but it was purely professional. There was no harassment whatsoever. Jason rambled on, spinning one lie after another. At that moment, Mr. Anderson nodded and said, Let's hear that audio. Certainly. Tom replied, playing the recording he'd prepared. The recording contained countless instances of Jason's abusive comments directed at Chris, dating back to shortly after I'd arrived at the office. What? Jason turned pale. I added. The truth is, my transfer here was to investigate complaints about Jason's abuse of authority submitted by other employees. There was also a complaint from the previous manager here, Tom continued. When the previous manager opposed Jason's harassment, he was transferred under pressure from Deputy Director Robert. Jason's eyes widened in shock at this revelation. These verbal abuses toward Chris are unacceptable, and the incident with the company trip is inexcusable, Tom said. Then, the audio of Jason's instructions and his mocking remarks from Atomy played from the recorder, making everything perfectly clear. And so, Mr. Anderson concluded, you're fired. This kind of conduct can't be overlooked. We will inform you too of your termination. Robert and Jason. Jason's voice rose in desperation. What? Why? Firing us just like that, now that's abuse of authority on your part. You're dragging me down with you. As Jason and his father, Robert, began protesting loudly, the CEO's assistant entered and promptly escorted the two out of the meeting room. Mr. Anderson then turned back to me, his expression softening. I'm truly sorry for putting you through such a difficult task. It's all right. It was my job, and I wanted to help Tom too, I replied. Your effort means a lot, and I owe you my thanks and an apology, not just from my father, but from me as well. Tom added, bowing his head respectfully. That's right. Tom was actually the son of Mr. Anderson. The man who'd visited my mom's diner recently was none other than Mr. Anderson himself. Since he had a different last name from Tom, I hadn't realized they were related, but they were, in fact, father and son. Apparently, Mr. Anderson had heard a lot about me through Tom and had decided to visit my mom's diner to meet her. During that visit, they discovered that my mother and Mr. Anderson were childhood friends. Despite nearly a decade age difference, my mother had often played with him when she was little. Initially, I had thought Mr. Anderson might be my father. But after hearing the full story, I understood the true connection. My mom and the CEO were lifelong friends, and Tom and I had met entirely by chance. Realizing this felt almost like destiny, and I was moved by the connection. After that, Jason and Robert were dismissed, and I was able to return to my original position at K Construction. The employees who had supported Jason's antics at the affiliate company were also appropriately dealt with. allowing Chris to work in a much healthier environment. And now, Tom is working with me in the same office. I'm genuinely happy to be back working alongside him. From here on, I'm determined to value the people around me and work hard at the job I love. I'm getting married soon. When the woman I had always admired confessed this to me, everything went dark before my eyes. Back in high school, during a tough time, she was the only one who stood by my side. I went to the reunion, even though I didn't feel like going, just to see her. And just as I was about to confess my feelings after all these years, she looked happy, thinking of someone else. The person you're marrying, could it be? My worst fears were about to come true in a way I never imagined. The person who showed up late to the after party was. What's with that attitude? Should I fire you, you incompetent fool? It was the same guy. Both back then and now, who always looked down on me, an old nemesis. This moment marked the beginning of a fight I just couldn't walk away from. To stop the marriage of the woman I first loved. To save the one who once saved me. My name is Danny, 30 years old. Today, I've come to a banquet hall at a hotel for my high school reunion. Naturally, all of my former classmates have grown into adults, but as I took a closer look, I could still see traces of who they once were, and just as I thought, this is fascinating, I suddenly heard a voice from behind. Danny! I'm so glad you came. Oh, hi. It was a tall woman in a navy blue dress. Her fair skin and almond-shaped eyes gave her a sophisticated look. With her sharp, well-defined features, she was a beauty without a single flaw. But even more captivating than her model-like face was her long, lustrous hair fell past her shoulder blades, almost glowing. Hee, what's wrong? Don't tell me you didn't recognize me? The beautiful woman chuckled at my curt greeting. As she laughed, her black hair swayed softly. Her hair was so beautiful that I couldn't help but follow it with my eyes. It was impossible to focus on the conversation. Even other classmates, casually chatting nearby, were glancing at her now and then. Honestly, I'm a little disappointed. I'm so happy to see you, but you don't seem to feel the same. Sorry. I'm just teasing. Anyway, it's been a while, Danny. Yeah, it really has, Anna. Awkwardly, I greeted my high school classmate. Her name is Anna. The only reason I came to this reunion was, simply, to see her. Danny! I saw you talking with Anna earlier. As Anna walked away, saying catch you later as a friend called her over, my classmates immediately gathered around. They surrounded me, all complaining with remarks like, "You're so lucky, and that's not fair." After all, back in high school, Anna was the one every guy dreamed about. Sorry. I just need to go to the restroom for a moment. I felt uncomfortable being the center of attention, so I quickly slipped out of the banquet hall. I'm already tired. I'm really not cut out for places like this. I found a quiet corner in the hallway where no one would come, finally able to take a breath. Back in high school, I used to do the same thing, finding places where no one else was around, just to avoid my classmates. Remembering that didn't exactly fill me with joy. In times like these, it was always Anna who would manage to find me. Talented, beautiful, smart, and athletic, a perfect honor student who was friendly with everyone. Honestly, she was way out of my league. If it weren't for Anna, I definitely wouldn't have come here. It all started about a month ago. I work at a small and medium-sized IT company. I was scheduled to meet the representative from the new client company for the first time during our business negotiations. We exchanged business cards, and as we did, we both said, "Wait." In surprise. Could it be? Danny? Anna, is that you? Incredibly, the client was an old classmate from high school. And not just any classmate, but someone I remembered particularly well. This is unbelievable. I never thought I'd run into you like this, Danny. Anna murmured with a hint of nostalgia, her sharp eyes softening. Seeing her looking even more beautiful than before, I completely forgot we were here for work. Anna started the conversation with me, saying, "Oh, by the way, Danny, are you going to the reunion?" "The reunion?" "Our high school one." "I already RSVP'd, but how about you?" Well. Honestly, I'd forgotten all about the invitation postcard until she mentioned it. I had no intention of going, so the reunion wasn't even on my radar. "But I'd be happy if you came too, Danny." "I'll go." Before I knew it, the words just slipped out. When she lit up and said, "Really?" I instantly regretted my impulsiveness, though it turned out to be the right choice. "Anna, what's up, Danny?" Never mind." I ended up graduating from high school without ever telling her those words. Each time we met for work, I tried to say it, but I could never muster the courage, letting time slip by. I'm glad I decided to go after all. I feel like I might actually be able to say it tonight. I've always struggled with social situations and expressing my feelings. But I decided to take advantage of the relaxed atmosphere of the reunion. If the conversation flowed naturally, maybe the right moment would come up. "All right. I can do this. Tonight's the night." Pep talking myself, I headed back into the banquet hall. I watched for a chance when Anna, constantly surrounded by classmates, might be alone. And that moment finally came during the second round at the bar, halfway through. "Sorry I couldn't talk with you sooner. I'm the one who invited you, after all." As she sat beside me in the corner of the room, Anna looked apologetic. I'd been sipping on drinks alone, waiting for a chance to talk with her, so the alcohol was already hitting me. Feeling the weight of my own hesitation, I felt all the more pathetic. It was my fault, yet here she was, apologizing to me. All I had to do was ask her to talk one-on-one from the start. But without the courage to do so, I'd wasted hours just brooding, just like back in high school. No, I'm the one who should be apologizing. Why should you apologize? You don't seem yourself. Really? That's right. Where's that composed Danny from work? You always answer any question right away, and even when there's trouble, you handle it calmly and flawlessly. I really respect that about you. Thanks. It wasn't just the alcohol, I could feel my face heating up uncontrollably. Her words were as straightforward and sincere as ever, just like back then. Back in those days, I couldn't handle how dazzling she was. I couldn't take her words at face value. "Ah. There you are, Danny." Whenever I was alone, Anna would always find me, even if I was at the farthest edge of the school. In high school, I never fit in with others and was always by myself. The classroom felt uncomfortable, and while I could tolerate it during classes, I couldn't stand being there even a minute during lunch. I would sneak away to eat in a quiet, deserted spot every day. "Hey, mind if I join you for lunch?" At some point, a girl from my class started joining my daily escape. She was a model student, class president, and rumored to be the most beautiful girl in school. Always bright and cheerful, she was the opposite of my brooding, solitary self. "Why?" I couldn't help but ask bluntly. Anna, without seeming to notice, made a small gesture as if thinking, saying, "Because I can't pretend not to notice, you know?" She said with a smile, as if it was nothing. "Ha! Well, I am the class president. I can't just ignore a classmate eating alone, you know? That's a personal choice, isn't it?" "Oh. That right there. Ha! You always have your own opinions, Danny. It must be because you're so smart. I think it's really cool." I couldn't say anything. No one had ever complimented me so honestly, then or since. Feeling my face suddenly heat up, I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't respond to anything she said. In the end, I mostly ignored her, but she still came to find me every day after that. "Anna. What is it, Danny?" Anna tilted her head slightly, in the same way she used to back then. As she did, her hair flowed smoothly, and it was so beautiful that I couldn't help but feel my heart skip a beat. Just when I'd finally calmed down, my face was starting to feel hot all over again. "Thank you, for back in high school." At last, I managed to say what I'd come here to say. I wanted to thank her for being the one person who showed me kindness back then. This was why I had been watching for a chance to speak with her all night. Sorry it took me so long to say this. Even if you did it out of a sense of duty as class president, I was grateful. It meant a lot. Knowing someone cared. Danny. Because Anna was there, my high school life wasn't completely dark. I can say there were good memories too, only because of Anna's overly caring kindness. At a time when I didn't have room to care about anyone else, I secretly respected her for being so different from me. And secretly, "Anna." "What is it, Danny?" Well. The words were right there, but I just couldn't get them out. Suddenly, Anna stood up slightly. "Hey, your face is completely red." "Hold on, I'll get you some water." "Ah. No, that's not it." I tried desperately to find the words to stop her, to keep her from leaving, but just then, as she moved, her hair swayed like a gentle wave. "Your hair." "Ha? Your hair. It's really beautiful, you know." "Ha ha." Laughing awkwardly, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind, practically sounding like a weirdo. She didn't say anything. Sorry for saying that out of the blue. That must have come off as creepy. "Really, I'm sorry." Anna froze with a serious expression, and I hurriedly apologized. "So, is this the end of my years-long unrequited love?" Feeling dejected inside, I cautiously glanced at her face. "I'm happy. I love it most when someone compliments my hair." To my surprise, she was smiling, her cheeks faintly flushed. The expression on her face, combined with her usual cool demeanor, was so adorable that it took my breath away. And at that moment, I thought to myself, I really do love her. The long hair suits me, doesn't it? He always says it looks beautiful on me. Her words hit me like a punch to the head. But the shock didn't stop there. "Yes. I'm getting married soon." "What?" With a radiant, happy smile, the woman I'd been in love with all these years announced her engagement. Congratulations." "Thank you." He couldn't make it to the reunion because of work, but he said he'll come pick me up when the after-party's over. "I see." "What?" Amidst the overwhelming shock, I fixated on her mention of reunion. If not for work, he would have been here. "So, that means Anna, your fiancé is. Is he someone from high school?" Just as I was about to ask, someone suddenly tapped me on the shoulder from behind. "Hey, Danny. Thanks for keeping Anna company." "Ha?" The man turned a cheerful smile toward me as I looked back in surprise. He was impeccably dressed in a well-tailored suit, with a modern aura and the kind of good looks anyone would notice. In an instant, everything clicked, and I felt the blood drain from my face. "Anna, your fiancé is Leo?" "Hey, don't get too familiar. Once I take over as president, you'll be the first person I fire, got it?" I fell silent. His voice was low and venomous, a far cry from his earlier friendly tone, as he whispered near my ear, pressing his hand painfully on my shoulder. "Well, got anything to say, Danny? Worthless little employee? Sorry. Leo and I were high school classmates, both in the same senior year class. But now, our positions couldn't be more different. The reason is, Leo's father is the president of the company I work for. What are you two chatting about over there?" When Anna tilted her head, Leo immediately let go of me. He sat beside her and wrapped his arm around her shoulders with a cheerful smile. "Oh, just saying how happy I am to see Danny here tonight." "Is that so? Now that I think about it, you two work at the same company." "What a coincidence." Exactly. You know, Danny's always been brilliant, even back in high school. He's incredible at work too, I rely on him all the time. I'm so grateful to my dad for hiring him. I was speechless. Leo had always been like this. He had a perfect public image, charming and friendly, the ideal student on the surface. But beneath that facade, man, just having this guy around ruins the whole class vibe, doesn't it? People like you who can't handle social situations shouldn't even bother coming to school, right, Danny? That voice still rings in my ears as if it were yesterday. In high school, I had extreme difficulty communicating with others and ended up isolated. And Leo, as the ringleader of his group, had decided I would be their target. Whenever Anna or the teachers weren't around, he and his friends would circle me, throwing insults and laughing at my expense. Upset, huh? Go ahead, tell someone if you can. Not that anyone would ever bother listening to you. Leo's words left a deep scar on my heart. Knowing I had no allies only made me withdraw further into my shell. I figured college would be more of the same, so I skipped it and went straight into the workforce after graduation. At my current company, though, I got lucky. So, life's been hard for you up until now, hasn't it? Our company president, Mr. Simon Klein, showed me understanding and went out of his way to make sure I was comfortable in my work. But that changed. Well, who'd have thought you'd end up working here? I'll make sure my dad doesn't fire you, for old time's sake. You'd better be grateful. High school grad. This happened last year. Suddenly, our company was bought out by another firm, and Mr. Klein had to step down. The new president was the president of the acquiring company, Mr. Kirkland. And, to my misfortune, the president's son, Leo, also became my new colleague. Leo was the same classmate from high school, the one who had left me with scars that still hadn't healed. The new president, Mr. Kirkland, was like an amplified version of Leo's worst traits. He played favorites with Leo, his own people, and a select few employees, while others were openly neglected. Needless to say, I fell into the unfavored category and was suddenly reassigned to a new department under Miles, one of Mr. Kirkland's cronies, who called me the most useless guy in sales and insulted me daily. Without any allies, I found myself an outcast again, just like in high school. So, you probably heard by now. Anna and I are getting married. As a friend and colleague, you're happy for us, right, Danny? Leo grinned, still holding Anna close, just as he always did, rebuking Miles with a "come on, that's too much." Only to turn around and hurl insults at me when no one else was around. Anna looked at him, cheeks blushing with happiness, smiling as she gazed back into his eyes. I couldn't even bring myself to reply. My silence must have annoyed him. Losing his patience, Leo accidentally let his true self slip out in front of her. Hey! Don't ignore me, you slug. Having gone to high school with you is the biggest embarrassment of my life. Remember this tomorrow at work. Got it? Leo. How could you say that to Danny? Oh, come on, I was just joking. That's just how we talk at work. Come on, let's head out. Wait. Despite Anna looking back at me a few times, Leo firmly led her away. Left alone, I was too stunned to process anything, sitting there in shock until the after-party ended. A few days after that disastrous end to the reunion. While I was still in shock, I found myself meeting with Anna again. I'm so sorry you had to come all this way. I really appreciate it. No problem. There had been an issue with a system we delivered to her company, and they asked me to come and fix it. It turned out to be a quick fix. But then, as always, Danny, you're amazing. I feel I can always count on you. Thanks. Actually, I wanted to apologize. About what Leo said that night. Oh, no, it's fine. I was shocked to learn about her engagement and crushed by who she chose. But it seemed Anna had been just as shaken by hearing her fiancé speak to me like that. Still looking uncertain, she wasn't her usual cheerful self. I also didn't know how to respond to her, and an awkward silence hung between us. "I'm really sorry." He's not usually like that. But it didn't exactly sound like a complete joke, either. It was just a joke, that's all. That's just the vibe in the office sometimes. Really. I just wanted to lift Anna's spirits, even a little. With that in mind, I lied to her. In truth, Leo often goes far beyond harmless jokes when he's around me. Fortunately, it seemed to work. Anna's expression softened slightly, looking relieved. Then, out of nowhere, she clasped her hands together toward me. "Danny, would it be too much to ask, but could you tell me more about Leo?" "Wait, what?" "Actually, I've been a little worried lately." And with that, she began sharing her concerns with me. She told me how they'd both been so busy recently that they hardly spent any time together. Every time she suggested a date, he turned her down, and she felt like she couldn't understand what he was thinking anymore. She admitted she was beginning to feel anxious. Of course, he's as kind as ever. But whenever I share my worries, he just says, "You'll be the president's wife someday. So stay confident." But I don't even feel that reality sinking in yet. I see. Is he really someone she should marry? The words were right on the tip of my tongue, but I swallowed them down. Even so, she loves Leo enough to choose marriage with him. Seeing that brought a sharp pang of pain to my chest. I'm sure he's working hard, he will be the president one day, after all. "Since you're both in sales, how's he doing?" "Ah, yeah, his performance is really good." "Really?" "Yeah." As much as I hate to admit it, Leo's talent is genuine. With his strong communication skills, he consistently ranks among the top in monthly sales performance. That's why no one suspects the darker side of him. "And anything else?" Sorry, but I really need to get back to work." Anything else I could say would only hurt her. Since I consciously avoid Leo as much as possible, I had little else I could share. Yet, when a woman you care for seeks your help, you feel compelled to step up. From the next day on, I started paying closer attention to Leo's behavior. If I could catch him being kind to others, maybe that would reassure Anna. And then I saw a side of Leo the first could have never predicted. With such a beautiful woman, I'd worry about you going home alone. How about I give you a ride tonight? And maybe we could spend a little time together, just the two of us? When I saw that scene, I could hardly believe my eyes. There was Leo in the office kitchenette, standing close to a new female employee who'd just joined this year. He had his arm around her waist, leaning into her as he suggested a date. "All right then, see you later." I was in shock. Sensing him about to leave, I quickly slipped away from the area. My heart was pounding, about to burst, yet my mind remained strangely clear, picturing Anna's face. What am I supposed to do about this? I just hoped I had misinterpreted the situation. To be sure, I discreetly checked around to see if anyone else had noticed anything. Unfortunately, what I learned only confirmed what I had seen. "Leo? Oh, yeah, lots of rumors about him." "You didn't know?" "He's got quite the reputation. In a bad way. But he's the future president, so no one dares to say anything publicly." People spoke of him with bitter expressions, prefacing each confession with, "Please, don't say I told you." Apparently, Leo had a habit of hitting on young female employees, inviting them on dates indiscriminately. And to make things worse, he was hiding the fact that he was engaged. What the hell? I had known Leo wasn't the kind of good-hearted person Anna believed him to be. But his level of cruelty exceeded even what I had imagined, and I felt a surge of blinding anger. Still, she kept asking, "So, how's Leo lately?" "We haven't seen each other much, but I hope he isn't overworking himself." Just a few days later, after a routine meeting, Anna invited me to lunch and asked about him again. "Yeah, he's doing well. Just really busy these days." Is that so? Well, I'm glad he's okay. Thanks, Danny. Yeah. I couldn't stand to see her face clouded with sadness because of anything I might say. So once again, I lied to her. But then, one day, I finally reached my limit. Engaged? Oh, boy. Who told you that? I heard these words echoing from the hallway late one evening, when I was the last one in the office. Leo. A sinking feeling formed in my gut as I quietly peeked out into the hall. Then, I'm only getting married because my parents insist. I don't have any romantic feelings, you're the only one I care about. A 30-year-old woman is too old for me to even consider her as a woman. Yet she keeps wanting to meet up every day. She's so clingy. And on top of that, she's a burden. She should look in the mirror before saying such things. With his arm around the shoulder of a younger female employee, Leo spoke those words. It was clear, even without him mentioning her name, who he was talking about, his fiancée, the 30-year-old woman. I'm glad Leo's doing well. I could see Anna's gentle, relieved smile in my mind's eye. All this time, while she'd been worrying over him, Leo was. This is ridiculous. Leo, completely oblivious to my presence, ran his fingers through the younger woman's hair, smiling tenderly at her. With every smug gesture, my anger only intensified. And finally, I couldn't hold it back any longer. You know, long hair really only looks good on younger women. When older women try to grow it out, it just looks sloppy. I only compliment her to keep her happy. She should be able to figure that out by now. Does she still think she's young? It's just pathetic. Honestly, I regret ever getting engaged. Enough. I rushed out into the hallway, only to have a female employee shriek and scurry away. Leo looked shocked as I grabbed him by the collar and shoved him against the wall with all my strength. Danny! What the hell do you think you're doing? That's my line. Anna, you have any idea what she's, and you? I was so furious I could barely articulate what I wanted to say. But I pressed Leo harder against the wall, forcing out what I could. How much Anna cares for Leo. Ever since the reunion, all she's talked to me about has been him. She takes such care of her hair because she loves it when you compliment it, and yet, you. But my words didn't faze him in the slightest. Get your hands off me, you pathetic loser. Leo. Look at my suit, it's all wrinkled now. Do you even know how much this costs? You couldn't afford a custom-made suit like this on your pathetic salary, could you? Leo brushed off the collar of his suit with his hand and sighed dramatically, saying, "Good grief." Then, his face twisted into a sinister grin. Oh, could it be? Do you want my fiancé for yourself? What? You seemed to be having a real good time chatting with Anna, didn't you? So that's it, the useless employee actually has the nerve to go after the future president's fiancé. Impressive, Danny. No, it's not like that. I've cared about her for a long time. Well, whatever. If you want her, you can have her, my leftovers. She may look decent, but she's just an old, uptight, and suffocating woman. Actually, she's perfect for someone as worthless as you. And you know what? Turns out those high school grades are useless in the real world, huh? You used to walk around as if you were the smartest guy on earth. And now look at you, a high school grad with a dead-end job. Honestly, the former president, Mr. Klein, must have been an idiot to keep you in development. My dad was absolutely right to fire him. Ha ha. Laughing loudly, Leo walked away, clearly pleased with himself. I was left standing alone, my hand instinctively reaching into my chest pocket. Good thing I remembered this. Soon afterward, I was removed from the Anna account. When Leo came over, smirking and saying, "Tough luck," I could tell it was probably one of his spiteful tricks. But what hurt more than the job transfer was the reality that I wouldn't be seeing Anna anymore. I see, such a shame. I really enjoyed working with you, Danny. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't bring myself to look at her sad expression. I finished our last meeting with her in silence. Thanks for everything, Danny. I'll send you an invitation to the wedding, you have to come, she said with a cheerful smile, extending her hand. And at that moment, I couldn't hold back any longer. Don't do it. What? Don't marry him, Anna. He's a horrible person. What are you saying, Danny? As she stared at me in shock, I spilled everything. How Leo was cheating with countless young women at the office. How rumors had spread quietly, and how most employees had already lost faith in him as the company's future president. How he'd been harassing me behind the scenes. And there's more. Gathering all my courage, I told her about the conversation I overheard recently. Leo already has no real intention of marrying Anna. So, she doesn't have to marry someone like him. If she went through with this, it would only end in heartbreak. I couldn't bear to see her hurt like that. But Anna shook her head. Lies, that's horrible, Danny. Why would you make something like that up? It's the truth. He's never been the person you think he is, not even back in high school. Please, trust me. Liar. Leo's always been serious, straightforward, and kind. I've watched him since back then, you know. I've loved him all this time, Danny. I know him better than you ever could. Anna, please leave. And don't come near me again. Her face was pale, her eyes brimming with tears, as she pointed shakily toward the door. With the room spinning around me, I mustered the last bit of strength I had, pulling an object from my chest pocket and placing it on the table. I'll leave this here. What's this? Is it a voice recorder? Yes. If you listen to it, I think you'll understand. The day I first witnessed Leo's infidelity, I felt a strong desire to save Anna. I bought the recorder, intentionally lingered near Leo, and caught his comments as he invited women on dates and insulted other employees. I'd only been there during that revealing encounter by chance, but no. With a trembling hand, Anna picked up the recorder. She pressed play, and the moment the recording started, she threw it violently onto the floor. It was me who asked you to tell me about Leo, but I didn't ask you to go this far. She buried her face in her hands, and tears began to drip onto the floor. Without a word, I bent down, picked up the recorder, and set it back on the table. Then, I turned and walked toward the door. I just couldn't look the other way. What? Your words saved me once, Anna. You said I couldn't just ignore it. You were the only person who ever told me that. It meant the world to me. Danny. I just didn't want you to end up feeling the way I did. I'm sorry. I overstepped. Goodbye, and take care. With those final words, I closed the door behind me. I'd hoped to leave with a smile, but who knows if I managed it. The only thing I knew for certain was that I wouldn't be smiling again anytime soon. After that, my life sank into utter darkness. Well, looks like you've lost the one thing you were good for, enthusiasm. Do you have any reason to keep showing up, Danny? I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Oh, don't worry. Honestly, I'd be grateful if you just left. There are plenty of people out there to replace a useless high school grad like you. I fell silent. I couldn't concentrate at all, making mistake after mistake, errors I would never have made before. Things had always been tense with Miles, but now he was treating me even more like an enemy. Maybe I should just quit for real. I was pushed to the brink to the point where I seriously started considering it. Anna's words haunted me, I never want to see you again. So, this is heartbreak, huh? Guess I had something left to learn. If it hurt this much, I wish I'd never learned it. Maybe Anna had felt the same way when she threw the recorder away. Now, as I sat at my desk, I wondered if what I did had really been right. Just then, Danny, can I talk to you for a minute? It was my colleague who had taken over Anna's account from me. What's up? This. Anna asked me to give this to you. Huh? I took the note he handed me, barely able to believe it. On it was written, Danny, I'm sorry about that day. A few days later, I went to the bar mentioned in her note, where Anna was already waiting. As soon as I sat down beside her, she bowed her head deeply. After that day, I listened to the recorder. I couldn't believe it, but I also knew you would never lie just to hurt someone. Yeah. It was a shock. Everything you said was true. I wondered if she hadn't been able to sleep since then. Dark circles were clearly visible under her downcast eyes. Her usually flowing hair was pulled back, looking less vibrant than the last time I'd seen her. Even so, I couldn't help but think, she's beautiful. Leo and I went to college together. When he confessed, I was so happy I could hardly believe it, even though I'd already heard rumors about his affairs. What? I didn't want to believe it. I kept looking the other way, and he would say things like, even if I cheat, you'll have to put up with it because you will be the president's wife someday, and my parents were already asking about grandchildren, so you thought if you just endured it. No. With tears threatening to spill, she gave a sad, wavering smile. It's all just excuses. The truth is, she was afraid to let go of all those years of feelings. For over a decade, she only had eyes for him. Now, at 30, the thought of finding love with someone new just feels impossible. She thought that if she had to break off the engagement with Leo and face life alone, then maybe it was better to just endure. And, no matter what, I could never bring myself to truly hate him. With those words, tears fell as Anna finally confessed her deepest fears. In that moment, I surprised myself by saying something I hadn't expected. That's okay. What? I mean, your hair looks beautiful. No matter what anyone says, it's really beautiful. Really? I added that last part to cover my tracks, and Anna gave a faint, bittersweet smile. Thank you, it's nice to hear that. It's not just your hair. You've always been beautiful, Anna. And it's not just your looks, it's your heart. You're kind, genuine, and that's what Danny. Just one more word was all I needed to say. For years, I'd wanted to tell her I'd always loved her, but somehow, the words wouldn't leave my lips. I'd spent over a decade looking at only her, too. I wanted to tell her that even if she left Leo, she wouldn't be alone, but seeing me fall silent, Anna gently changed the subject. By the way, about Leo, have you noticed anything strange with him lately? I've actually been wondering for a while. He's been spending extravagantly, foreign cars, luxury watches, custom suits. He says his dad's paying for it all, and even his dad seems to live lavishly. And, no offense, but Danny, your company is. Yeah. She was right. Since Mr. Kirkland acquired our company, business has been in decline. Yet despite this, Mr. Kirkland and Leo's spending habits seem to keep escalating. Anna had been discreetly probing me about Leo to confirm her suspicions. If I could stop him, I thought I should as his fiancé. I wondered if maybe he was involved in something he shouldn't be. I was speechless. Anna's face clouded with worry. Taking a deep breath, I finally decided to reveal the truth I knew. Listen carefully. The truth is, 1 month later, I made my way to the conference room, having heard that an emergency board meeting was being called at the company. And so, we'll be appointing my son here as the new vice president. I heard Mr. Kirkland's voice as he took a vote from the board members. At that moment, I opened the conference room door. Excuse me. You are Danny? What are you doing here? This is a board meeting. Mr. Kirkland and Leo, the latter already acting as if he were a board member, both raised their voices in surprise. Ignoring them, I walked directly to the center, facing the board members. "And who are you? What's your department?" The board's skeptical expressions were directed at me, and I introduced myself as Danny from sales. Then, I dropped the package I'd brought onto the table in front of them. "Please, take a look at this before making any appointments. It will help you decide if Leo and Mr. Kirkland are really suitable to be in leadership positions." "What? What's the meaning of this?" Mr. Kirkland and Leo both fell silent, speechless. The other board members exchanged looks, murmuring in confusion. I casually handed out the packages to each of the executives. The order didn't matter at all. Because every document there was proof of the Kirkland family's corruption. First, we found suspicious transfers in the company's funds. Upon investigation, we discovered that large sums were repeatedly transferred to an unrelated account, under a company name that turned out to be a shell company established by Mr. Kirkland. He was in shock. Mr. Kirkland's face went pale, and the murmurs among the board members grew louder. Calmly, I continued reading out the contents of the documents. From embezzlement and bribe-taking to inflated expense claims, Mr. Kirkland and his son, using their positions, had exploited the company shamelessly. Their lavish lifestyle was funded by treating the company as an endless source of money. In addition, there are traces of falsified business data. The actual state of the company's finances is far worse than you may realize. "Shut up!" Sweating profusely, Leo lunged at me, grabbing me by the collar. He shoved his face close to mine, shouting incoherently, though it boiled down to one sentiment. "Someone like you, a high school grad, couldn't possibly understand this. Get real, Danny. You're disturbing the busy board members. Get out now." Yes, exactly as Leo says. "I'm ordering you to pick up those worthless papers and disappear, you useless high school grad." Buoyed by his son's bold words, Mr. Kirkland regained his vigor and gave my shoulder a powerful shove. I staggered back, but then felt someone behind me, catching my fall. Turning around, I saw. "Are you all right, Danny?" "Mr. Klein. Just call me Simon now," he replied with his familiar, gentle smile. It was Simon, the former president, ousted by Mr. Kirkland. "Mr. Kirkland, it's improper to rough up your employees, especially one as talented as Danny." "What's that? Have you lost your mind since you were fired, you pathetic loser, Simon? This guy isn't talented. He's just a burden with a high school diploma. So that's why you removed Danny from the development team. If you hadn't made that foolish move, the company's performance wouldn't have declined like this." "What?" As Mr. Kirkland's face twisted in confusion, I exchanged a nod with Simon, ready to reveal how I'd gathered all the evidence. Suspicious fund flows, emails requesting bribes, falsified data, all of these were tracked through a certain system. A system? Yes. It's a system created to detect any internal misconduct, like embezzlement, within the company. It monitors any misuse of internal computers with a 100% detection rate, without alerting the culprit. Ha! Ridiculous. If such a system exists, its creator must be a genius. Mr. Kirkland scoffed at my explanation. Then Simon let out a big laugh, going, "Ha! What's so funny, Simon? The fool here is you, Mr. Kirkland. You tossed this genius into sales and threw away the company's potential. What are you saying? The creator of that system is none other than Danny, this talented system engineer standing right here." "What?" Mr. Kirkland, Leo, and even the board members all turned their wide eyes toward me. Feeling their stares, I couldn't help but smile awkwardly, remembering the time when Simon had first called me a genius. Since I was young, I'd always felt out of place. For example, while other kids my age were excited about toys, I found no interest in them. I didn't want to play with them or talk with them. Instead, I spent my time alone, absorbed in reading encyclopedias. My parents, thinking there was something wrong with me, took me to a doctor, where they learned my IQ was close to 200. Listen, Danny. Don't think of yourself as special. No matter how smart you are, you won't survive in society unless you can get along with others. Don't tell anyone about your IQ. People will think you're strange. My parents apparently couldn't bear to admit that their son was different. They always told me to get along with everyone, to act like everyone else. They wanted so badly to raise me as a normal child. And outside, I felt that everyone around me was much younger mentally, making it impossible to fit in. Thus, I spent my days isolated at home and school. Eventually, in my final year of high school, I decided to go against my teacher's advice and enter the workforce. If I couldn't connect with people my age, I figured I might as well join the adult world sooner. Because I felt that, by doing so, I might meet someone who would truly understand me. And I did. Wow, you taught yourself programming? That's incredible. You're a real genius. In high school, Anna was the first person to show me kindness. Then Simon was the first person to truly acknowledge me. During the interview, he was the only one who genuinely listened to what I had to say. And despite opposition from others, he hired me as a system engineer. It must have been tough for you all this time. But you pushed through it. That's something remarkable, Danny. I was speechless. It's not just your smarts, I admire your resilience. I'll do everything I can as president to make this company a place where you can thrive. Just be yourself and do your best here, okay? Yes. I will. Thank you, Mr. Klein. That was the first time I ever cried in front of someone. And Simon kept his promise. Knowing I struggled with social interactions, he issued a presidential order allowing me to skip company parties and social gatherings. He also personally bridged the gap between me and my colleagues. With his support, I was able to focus entirely on my work, achieving success in developing groundbreaking systems. With those accomplishments, I finally started gaining recognition from my colleagues and took on a major project. That is the development of a system to detect internal corporate fraud. The project was promising, and we were certain it would make waves and propel the company forward. But just as we reached that critical moment, the company was bought out, and Simon stepped down. Under the new president, Mr. Kirkland's dismissive view that someone with only a high school diploma couldn't possibly develop systems, I was transferred to the sales department. So you finished it on your own, Danny. Simon, with a deeply moved expression, placed a hand on my shoulder. I placed my hand over his and nodded. It's still in the prototype stage, and I couldn't have gotten this far alone. My team in development helped me behind the scenes, staying hidden from Mr. Kirkland. So the team's been helping too. I'm sorry. If I'd been quicker, maybe we could have prevented the buyout. It's all right. Thanks to this, certain people here have just proven your talent in the most dramatic way possible. Isn't that right? Simon, who was always calm, shot a sharp glare. Ah. Eek. Mr. Kirkland and Leo both turned pale, dropping to the floor in shock. As the two sat there in disbelief, several of the board members stood up and surrounded them. Then Tyler turned to me and Simon. Danny, we'd like to hear the full details. Can you explain? Yes. We'll also have Simon join us in the following meetings. It looks like you'll be returning as our president. Of course. When Simon gave a big nod, Mr. Kirkland finally lost his last bit of resolve and slumped his shoulders in defeat. Seeing this, Leo weakly murmured, "Dad. I'm sorry. I'll tell you everything." He too slumped in despair. After that, Mr. Kirkland's misconduct was exposed, and he was removed from his position on the board. His favorite employees went into a panic. Since the majority of them had been involved in misconduct, they were all dismissed along with Leo. With the arrogant Kirkland faction purged, the office atmosphere improved dramatically. Under the new presidential order from Simon, who had been reinstated as president, I was back in the systems development department. I was welcomed warmly by my colleagues, and with the backing of Tyler and others who now respected my abilities, I was unanimously promoted to project manager. Now, my team and I are steadily, albeit gradually, bringing the company's performance back on track together. Eventually, the Kirkland father and son were arrested for embezzlement and various other crimes. With a guilty verdict certain, it looks like they'll be serving time to atone for their actions. But when they're released, they'll still face a massive compensation debt to the company. To atone for everything, it will likely take almost a lifetime. First off, well done, Danny. After Leo's issues were finally put to rest, I met up with Anna again at that bar. There she was, waiting for me at the counter, with her long hair cut short, ending at her neck. It's quite a change, isn't it? Everyone keeps asking, did something happen? Oh, yeah. Even though her fiancé's arrest was a huge, life-altering event, Anna looked surprisingly refreshed, almost radiant. The reason soon became clear. I broke it off. I ended things with Leo myself. What? Just before he was arrested, he came to see me, begging, if you love me, hide me. When I saw him like that, I was completely over it. I couldn't believe I'd loved someone like that for so long, when there were so many better people out there. What? At those last words, she looked directly into my eyes, and my heart thumped harder than ever before. Should I grow my hair out again? No, it's beautiful, even short. Really? Thank you. Then, let's toast to both of us. Cheers. With a bright smile, she clinked her glass against mine. That gesture, that expression, it was so beautiful I couldn't look away. And once again, that feeling stirred within me. Anna, hey, Danny. What did you mean when you said, that's okay? Huh? You told me that, here in this bar. I'd been curious ever since. Well, that's... Tell me, please? Gradually, her body leaned closer to me. Her refined features and beautiful short hair were now so close I could almost touch them. And finally, I had no choice but to confess. No matter who you love, I think I'll always love you. That's what I wanted to say. You think? No. I mean, definitely. Even if you married someone else. Would you be okay with that? No. I don't want you to marry anyone else. For once, the words came out honestly and effortlessly. And as if she'd been waiting for it, a single tear fell onto my hand. All right, I won't. Ah. With her eyes full of tears, Anna smiled. Gently, I placed my hand over hers. Anna. Would you date me with marriage in mind? Someday, when her wounds are fully healed, I'll propose to her for real. Not, I don't want you to be with anyone else. I'd say, please marry me. Because I'm sure she would nod with that radiant smile of hers, just like she does now. I believe that any object or person must be placed in its rightful place in order to shine with its true brilliance. I know a woman who ended a love that brought her only sadness, even though she loved deeply. Now, she's more radiant than ever before. Perhaps, it's because I am that place where she belongs. Could I dare to believe that? And I, too, have finally returned to a place where I can fully utilize my abilities. Now, each day feels bright and fulfilling, as if the future itself is shimmering before me. If these days continue, I plan to give my all, holding nothing back, putting forth my very best effort.